Thank you very much for joining us.
No, my pleasure. My goodness.
Adam Woods, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's Tuesday night at the 10th Planet Youth Center. We just did a small little class. Usually on Tuesday and Thursdays, I have Anthony teach class because, man, he hasn't been promoted to purple yet. He should. He's the one I learned from.
Okay.
And he's also my yogi. So it's kind of bummed that you didn't get a chance to do his class. But we got to roll a little bit, and that's always just that was cool, especially because it was such a small class.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a nice and intimate setting. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was excited the whole time. Yeah. So we don't know each other that well, man. We just we ran into each other maybe a month or so, maybe 2 months ago.
A little bit more, like 6-7 weeks ago at the Fight Academy Sunday Rollers. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a SoCal open mat. Anybody comes in. We've got a bunch of just eclectic people going in there. Which that's every jiu-jitsu type setting. Anytime you set a tatami down, it's just like, oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what? I was when I had stopped by one day to talk with a savant.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned it, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool, because he was talking about how he does it for the community, how he'll usually walk everyone through a technique lots of times.
Absolutely.
He's like, so that way you get a feel, everyone gets to know that they're there to work with each other. And yeah, when I went, man, it was cool. I got to I talked with so many people, and that's one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu is getting out of your comfort zone and talking to people that you would never talk with. Like, are we going to talk? Where would we have talked? If we're just walking down the street, are we going to stop and talk to each other? Do we know we have anything in common? And I think most people are just so maybe they're just shy.
Yeah,
like I'm an introvert. I usually don't think people even want to fucking talk to me.
What?
Yeah. So, but that's what's awesome about jiu-jitsu. It led to a conversation, and we had a really cool conversation about martial arts and why you were into it.
Yeah.
And I liked your take on it. So why don't we just let's back up a little bit and talk about who are you? Like where are you from? Where are you at right now in your life? Like what's going on? And then we'll talk about martial arts and what that's done.
Cool. Yeah. So I grew up talking about eclectic. I grew up primarily in the Bay Area from let's see, I want to say the first 7 years of my life. And then we had a little bit of we had a sojourn in Fiji, where my mom is from. Stayed in Indiana for a bit, where my dad is from, and even them meeting, they met in Pacifica, Fiji, Indiana. Those shouldn't mix, but they did, and out came me first, and my sister later. But I think I want to say it was I was in second or third grade, where just some domestic violence stuff happened, and it wasn't cool, so we actually had to leave the state. And as you can tell, I've got eczema, so we needed to get out of the Bay climate for my eczema. Yeah. And then my dad's family was in Indiana. So we stayed there for a bit. Then to Vegas, Georgia, New Mexico. Yeah. And then this is all before I hit grade school. I think we came to LA when I was, I say 9 turning 10.
Okay.
Yeah. But my kind of I guess introduction into martial arts, most people can oh, I saw this Bruce Lee film, and this was what got me in. Me, it was wrestling, dude. Professional wrestling, WWF, that type of stuff, and that was just kind of the gateway. And we were kind of talking off air about my kind of main influence in wrestling, and I can pinpoint the first wrestling match that I ever saw was one half of the Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Macho Man Randy Savage, and I went ahead and looked at on YouTube that match, and I could call it in my mind, so that was my first foray, because I didn't all of those experiences, in different places, and plucked out of school 6 weeks in, and not really being able to kind of have a formative any type of relationship with the people, but I could basically turn on the TV and see wrestling, and I knew those guys, and for me it was again the Harts, Brett and Owen, and they had a technical style of wrestling, like not jumping off. I mean, Owen could do it, and Owen is the one who unfortunately passed away with that rappelling accident. He fell to his death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not a pretty deal. But they had their dad. Anytime they would wrestle, any commentator would talk about their dad, Stu Hart, and he was a promoter in the Western Canada, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and they said regardless of like what your background was before, you had guys that were like shock putters, like Jim the Anvil Neidhart, shock putter out of Huntington Beach. Andre the Giant, if you know, folklore. He's in The Princess Bride. Stu Hart would make them all scream with these sugar holes, and like I think the path for me in martial arts has always been figuring out what Stu Hart did to make those people say uncle.
So with the wrestling, was that what it was? So was there any draw to like the story and for like just seeing it on TV and all that, or were you really drawn to what these guys were doing with their body, what they're the moves that they're performing?
Yeah, I mean, there's the dramatic aspect that'll pull you in, but for me, again, the technical guys, anybody from Canada, anybody from, if I heard like Wigan, England, I was like, I'm totally in. You don't have to sell me anymore, because like that's catch wrestling. I wasn't about I didn't grow up like, I think after that stuff happened with my parents, like I didn't like, the childhood just got
Really?
yeah, just off. So the reading the comic books or whatever, like I just couldn't relate anymore. So it was all about what people can do with whatever that they're given, and then kind of using that as like a foundation to get out of where they're at. So I became super interested in wrestling, the World's Strongest Man, but then even to like a lesser degree, like there's the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Championships, because I mean those are folks just like us that could do these crazy things with their body, so it was all in the same realm. And even for me, like you kind of had to eat a little crow for liking some of that stuff, especially during the down periods. Or I mean, if you're a mixed martial arts fan, like UFC 1 through 27. I mean, even Rogan, the great Joe Rogan, who's like, yeah, it was better if I told people I was doing sword stuff than going to Dothan, Alabama, and watching two guys in a cage just beat the tar out of each other. So yeah, so that's been my deal about like there's these people that do these extraordinary things. What can I do to kind of shine the light on it? Like this is what I'm into,
I'd like to take a little step back, because some people, I don't know if they realize the extent of like what childhood can do. Because last week or 2 weeks ago I was talking with Marshall, and he was talking about just how screwed up he was, and he had a good childhood.
Yeah.
Like, I feel the same way about me. It's like, yeah, I have all these screwed up thoughts. Like, what was wrong with me? Why didn't I like myself? I had a good childhood. There wasn't all this crazy moving, like all those different things that you experienced. Like, do you like talk a little bit about that? Like, and how much was bullying happening because you were the new kid? So not only racial, but just you're a new kid.
Yeah. I mean that's probably, I guess, now that you kind of brought it up, I think that's why I got into like professional wrestling, like these these Herculean type strength, archetypes, because you didn't have that as a 7-year-old kid, like you couldn't find your way out of a situation. And I mean, I tell people to this day, like, you like that stuff. I'm all like, I think that's the greatest story ever told. Like you get your tail kicked 364 days out of the year by your opponent, and it seems like insurmountable odds. And literally, like on the grandest stage of them all, you get to topple your foe in front of 90,000 people with a big gold belt, signifying that you're the best at what you do. No better than you. Like, I can't relate to Captain America or Iron Man after that. Like, that's it, And with the UFC, like you have the, I was just watching the the lead up to like the Michelle Waterson fight, Paige Van Zandt fight, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like this is tremendous. I actually just even put out a video for Marcos Bonilla, who's he fights out of Defiant Gym in Burbank, and he's fighting for the CXF promotion in Studio City this Saturday, and like just hearing his story, and it's just like we're the exact same age, but he had some tumultuous stuff growing up and what have you, and how he, kind of steered the path, and it led him to fighting, and he could use and cultivate something that was normally for bad, and he can basically just bottle up it inside and just use it as this light to get out of a situation, and it's just like so cool, man.
No, I think that's one of man, when I first started this project, I didn't know if I wanted to do it. I didn't know anything about interviews. I didn't know, like, it was just all foreign, and I felt like I had no business doing it. But I realized I enjoyed talking to people and trying to understand who they are. It's like, okay, how did you get here to where you want to fight, or that you're doing this, or that you're doing that, and just seeing all these different things. But it's the guys like Tim Lasik. He was bullied, and so bad to where like he snapped, man. But and he just had to become a bigger, stronger guy, and he found wrestling. And then also boxing, and but so many different fighters, they find the one thing and they apply it themselves, and then man, it's been powerful, and it's all those stories that makes me just so excited about pushing martial arts, and because I didn't even know if I wanted my daughter to do it. When I started this, she was 3, and I was afraid that she was going to become a fighter, and I was looking at MMA like such a negative thing, and I didn't watch it anymore or anything. And now I was like, no. I was like, now you see she's got her pictures up on the wall.
That's awesome.
She did 3 competitions this year.
Wow.
And and what's cool too is like she knows that she could stop at any time.
Yeah.
I was like, it was like, if it's not fun, you don't come in.
Yeah,
I was like,
absolutely.
And because of that, like, she's excited, and she got her gray belt. I think solid gray belt.
I saw that on Facebook.
Yeah,
That's tremendous.
but it was
Congratulations.
Yeah, man. It was, and because usually I'm like, fuck belts. Like, who cares about belts?
Right.
But I understand the importance. I see how it's working, but just to see her reaction, because she was holding it up there when he gave it to her. She was the only one that got promoted. And then she just ran back to her spot, and she she hugged it so tight.
Yeah.
And then she looked over her shoulder to find me and just to smile at me. And I was like, that's cool. I was
it.
like, because I didn't know whether or not it's important to her. I didn't want her to do it to try to impress me, or her mom or whatever else. But I was like, so it's man, it's so powerful, and just seeing so many kids and talking with so many parents is like the changes that it makes. So yeah, I'm really going to be trying to work with putting together a foundation to get jiu-jitsu into high schools and boys and girls clubs.
That's
and
tremendous.
All that. So,
yeah, that's a game changer.
Yeah, so I think it should be cool, and I think it's definitely doable. I already talked with a lot of big name fighters that are down to help, and people in the industry, and so I think it'd be awesome. And it's already happening.
Tremendous,
like there's high school programs now, not a lot of them,
right?
But they're out there. It's like, if you want to cut down on bullying, if you want to give people something to better themselves, teach them a new way to learn,
right? Absolutely.
So
yeah. No, and just to kind of go back to like the bullying aspect of it, like at any given moment, it was like it flip flopped. Like sometimes I was the bully, and sometimes I got bullied. And me, just again, growing up with that crazy kind of like eclectic childhood, like you don't know where you stand.
How much anger did you have?
Oh, a lot. Yeah. And so from 95 on, primarily we were based in Inglewood,
Okay.
right? And so, I mean, and from how that happened, we went from Georgia, and I had a thick Georgian accent, right? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. That whole deal, right? And then going to Inglewood, like Crozier Middle School, like they're just like, what? And you look like us, but you're not. And it's just like, and for the most part, you're talking about second, third generation, not just in country, but like native Inglewoodians, like they haven't gone out to Lenox or Hawthorne. They're just there, and like, like their dad is locked up or whatever the case. And here I come, and it's just like, what are you? Like, what are you,
Yeah.
And then, I'll take them home and like curry chicken. And it's just like, okay, like you fry it. we curry it, but we both eat chicken. That's cool. Yeah, but yeah, it's been a crazy journey because like again, not really fitting in, and it's funny where you say like you're an introvert, like I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I was like totally that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I fought, and one of the reasons why I didn't have like a record is because my mom, she actually worked at City Hall in Inglewood, and even how that happened was like she was like we lived kind of where Randy's Donuts is. If you've ever been to Inglewood, right? We lived back behind there, and she worked at the Fiji Visitors Bureau, which was like right next to the LAX Hilton,
Mm-hmm.
right? She would walk us to school, which was like a midway point, walk all the way there, right? And then on her lunch break, walk us all the way back,
Wow.
and then she got to a point where she was like, "Oh, they have their friends," and it was just me and my sister, right? They have their friends, and I'll let them walk alone. But she was making that trek, and then just like one day, she was just like I'm done. Like this is too much, you know. So she looked at like literally in the view, the peripheral of like the skyline of England, and was like, "I want to work there." And it was City Hall was like the tallest building, and she was just like, "I want in." Right, and so she took us like I grew up obese, let's just say, because I just
Really?
yeah that was my way. Like I didn't have weight sets or whatever, but that was my way in my head psychologically to the WWF. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get as big as possible, you know. So she literally goes into the human resources department in City Hall, and with her two kids in tow, which is like a cardinal sin if you're applying for a gig. And she goes, "What do I have to do to, to work here?" And then just kind of passively, the lady just like, "Oh, here's a little spindle with all the open positions," and like the only one was like this IT position, like a secretary position, and my mom was like, "Well, I don't have this degree or whatever, but I can guarantee you, I can do this job," you know. And they're like, "What do I have to do?" And the lady's like, "Oh, you have to take this exam." She's like, "Okay." But so you see why I'm doing this. You see this in my two kids. If I'm taking the civil service exam, like that's taking away from their studies, my time with them. So if I take this test and I will pass, you're not going to entertain any other interviews. And the lady was taken aback, and it's like, okay. So my mom got the spot, and the IT department at the time, I don't know if it's still there, but it was in the basement of City Hall, like under, right, 9 floor building, and it's even under that. And by the time she went in her self-imposed retirement, like 10 years in, she was one of the assistants to the mayor.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of like, but again, I would have, if not for my mom, I would have been that guy with the record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when did that start to change? Did you take any martial arts at all? Did you go into wrestling? What were you doing? What, was just fights on the?
Yeah, just fights in the yard. And literally, like, I would mimic what I saw on wrestling, and for like my build, again, being a short, stocky guy, I sit 5'9" or stand 5'9" now. Growing up, I was like 4'11", 5 foot. So just big, and my
Mm,
fighting style was like Mick Foley. And if you don't know who Mick Foley is, he's like the hardcore legend. Like if somebody got into a fight with me, it was just like, okay, here's a trash can, I'm taking 3 of you guys out, and that's it. So that's kind of how I survived England. And then like some, like a certain few just like what the hell is this kid up to, man? And
mm,
they're just like, I don't know if it was taking pity on me or seeing something in me that was a little bit different, that they're just like, okay, like you can just come here and just settle down, whatever. And once that happened, like things started changing. And then I was in ROTC. That was a bit of like direction for me. My dad,
mm.
the reason why he came out here was he got drafted into the military. Now before he had got drafted, he was in a family band, and that family band, like, they played against like a pre Michael Jackson 5. the same like this Indiana State Fair circuit and bordellos and what have you. And then he got drafted, and after his service, they just like left him in Berkeley, right? Uh, so he didn't really believe in like the military structure, but he knew like I was either gonna end up dead or like killed. I mean, dead or in prison, like going the route that I was, and you know, nothing like narcotic or anything like that. Like I was scared of all of that stuff, you know. But I was just like I was just going down a path where like the anger led me, and it's kind of funny because like my mom, she actually brought us up like a Nichiren Buddhist, yeah, right? So like, you know, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, like, you know, like you're supposed to be like the higher Ichinen, you know, like higher self worth, and I was just like in a bad way, man, just not fitting in.
How much anger did you have for yourself? Like, how much did you like yourself at all, or was lots of that anger?
Oh yeah, dude. I think I'd probably try to commit suicide. Man, jeez, like probably 3 times growing up. Like
Really?
and I want to say, so the first time, and I didn't like I had seen like a 2020 deal about like kids. Like I didn't know what it was, but it was like 7. That I was just like, I actually wrote a note, you know, like I scribbled a note to my parents and what have you. And then they were getting into a fight, and I saw my sister, and like we were 3.5 years apart, and I'm older, and you know, she's just crying, you know, and I was just like, I crumpled the note, you know, and I crumpled the note, and then I took her into like a closet and read to her. I had just learned how to read, and that was it. So that was like the first time, and then like I think I was in middle school, and I cut myself, you know, and then the third time, and it was like the last time. It's kind of crazy, but like I actually drank like Drano.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I immediately like threw it up, and I was just like, okay, I'm here for a reason, you know? But I don't know what happened, but like my metabolism, like it started to speed up after that. I don't know if it was because of that or not, but like it literally was like a seminal change in my life, because like I started dropping weight, which I couldn't do after like, you know, ROTC 3 times a week, you know, like 5 a.m. in the morning and jogging your, you know, like I couldn't lose it. But like that Drano, I think it was like,
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. And then like I got down to like my senior year, I was like 165, and like the it's I likened it to the Family Matters, like the Urkel versus Stefan Urkel. Like I was Urkel, like fat Urkel, and then like dropping weight, and then I had like I wanted to go to the Air Force, and yeah, I had a goal in mind, and like all the gals that were like, oh, you know, I like you, I like you, but I don't like you. I wish my boyfriend were like you. They were like, oh, okay. But even to me, like I was like, oh man, I'm losing a friend. Like I don't want any part of it, you know. So, yeah. So like a lot of different things, but angry about like the situation, you know, and not really feeling like there was a way that I could get out of it. And as far as like martial arts is concerned, like I think when things were good, you know, I think I was in like first grade. I did like soccer. I did judo. My mom at the time was working for the community center in San Rafael, California, Marin County. So I was in soccer and judo, gymnastics, and but that all kind of stopped after that domestic violence stuff, you know. And even before that, like my dad, he was a street musician. In like the Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. So like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they were the only days that we worked, you know. And he basically, you know, him and his saxophone partner, they played contemporary jazz. My dad was the keyboardist, and they, you know, produced like 4 albums, you know, on their own, and you know, tips and everything like that. But like at a time where people were losing their jobs, like we were staying afloat. But like from all that, like I think that judo. It was like it was judo and gymnastics, and then not having anything until like I want to say my mom's seeing all the anger that I had. There was a martial arts school that opened up, and it was actually ran by Marcus Boset, who he was in one of the I think one of the first three UFCs.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was doing the traditional karate, but it just didn't feel right. My coordination, even still to this day, is off. I couldn't get the movements or what have you. But again, it's the constant search from figuring out what Stu Hart was doing in his dungeon or basement, all those years ago.
So have you figured out what it is for you? So what is? I mean, because a lot of people think too, okay, you're either a natural grappler or you're a natural striker. There's probably I don't know, maybe there's something with our personality. And I'm reading a book right now on the anatomy of violence, and that's showing just how much certain people, because of physical changes, are going to be or differences are going to be more aggressive, and so maybe they would striking more or whatever else.
Yeah.
So what have you found, and are you trying to, and what are your goals with the martial arts?
With I mean, for me, and it's kind of weird. Okay, oh, I'm a martial artist, but I guess it comes with the territory. But me, again, it's been the constant surge of what Stu Hart was doing, and then what one of my favorite mixed martial artists is Dan the Beast Severn, and when I saw him come to the WWF in '97, and Jim Ross, the commentator, is oh, he's a UFC Ultimate Fighting Champion, and I'm like, what is that? And I literally after there was a Monday Night Raw, and he had the UFC belt, the NWA, three or four different belts on him, with the gray, soaking wet sweatshirt, cut off sweatshirt, and knowing that professional wrestling had a little bit of art in it, there's some choreography in it. Seeing him do that to people in the cage, where literally the only three rules that during those times were no kicking, no biting, no what's that, eye pokes, and there was a third one,
fish hooks. Was that
fish hooks? Yeah, fish hooks. Yeah, and even to get my dad to get it at the video store, I was Charles Bronson, UFC 2. And he was I guess UFC 2, right? and seeing Dan Severn do that same thing to people that were literally just no holds barred, guy at the end of the bar, oh my gosh, and then when Hoist choked him out, I'm all whoa, what is this jiu-jitsu stuff? And then I kind of fell out of it. But as far as goals, right now I've got a couple videos out, just kind of highlighting some of the fighters that are in our area. I was fortunate enough, first off, how I started in jiu-jitsu, it was Straight Gi up in Bakersfield under Matt and Jill Baker, who are tremendous. They're John Jock black belts, but it was just strictly gi. I literally paid 6 months in advance, and I'm here. And it worked because one of my friends that I was working with, one of my coworkers, actually was a blue belt under them. And right around the time that I was hey, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, he was going on his lunch breaks, and I was okay, can I come with you? I tried my first class, and I was I'm in.
Yeah. And why did you decide to do it? Were you doing it because you thought maybe one day you would want to fight, or because you're just interested in it? Why did you go to that class?
It's so funny because I actually thought that mixed martial artists, people that are in MMA, they do everything. They do a little karate, they do a little jiu-jitsu. So in my mind, to be a MMA fighter, you had to do that. And and I was I was in my mid-20s. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility. I knew I had a long way to go to achieve that, but part of the theatrics of professional wrestling for me was the guys that could eloquently talk about what was going on, the Jim Rosses, the Gordon Solie's. Now in UFC, Rugen is he's the benchmark, there. So for me, it's always like shining a light on here. There's two combatants, and it's something that like golf you have to learn, like basketball you have to learn and get coordination and what have you. But like this sport, this art that we're choosing to, well, it I think it chooses us. Some it's latent, some get it right off the bat. Geez, looking at like Paige Van Zandt and Sage Northcutt, and you're just like, that's out there. Like they're the prototype of like doing this from the onset. I'm at Fight Academy, and I'm just like in awe of like the kids that are starting in MMA, like
Yep.
starting in MMA, not jiu-jitsu, not like they have this like defined martial art. Like they're training in mixed martial arts at 6, 7. And you're like, oh my gosh! Like when they get 16, they're turning pro, and that's it.
And then we're gonna see, and maybe at that point we're gonna see all the numbers on all the brain damage.
Yeah, I think so.
I am worried about that, man.
Yeah.
Like just because, and the younger you get started, like I know kids that are taking shots to the head now.
Yeah.
It's like, and people might say, well, they're gonna take shots in football. Like, yeah, well, that's fucking really dangerous too.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, everything. And I still need to wrap up the book, and
Right.
and I was like, yeah, it's fucking dangerous. But man, the reward, does the reward outweigh the risk? And that's one reason why I was asking you too about which sport you're doing, because I had to make the decision to I had to remove myself from sparring, and so for me that meant I couldn't even go to striking classes, because if I was doing a striking class, I don't want to be a pussy and not spar.
Right.
And it was because of my buddy turned me on. Like my last day of sparring was at dude, I got the shit kicked out of me by so many guys, and this is at 42, 43, when I just shouldn't be in there, and I'm taking blows from like Fabricio Verdun and Babalu and guys like that. And
it sounds like legends.
this is at King's MMA.
Oh, Kings, yeah.
No, dude, it was brutal. Like Master Cordillera didn't know. Like I'd gone through the whole class, I was feeling good as when I was training my kicks and everything. And then for the first round, he put me against Babalu, Fabricio, and he's standing there watching. Like, and so I'm like, okay, maybe they're just gonna play, but like he dropped me 8 times, and that's like, and so he backed off every time. And but so I kept it up though, and I started getting in better shape. And then I was thinking, I was like, I want to fight, because I sucked as a fighter. I had a terrible record. I was 3-5.
Yeah.
I was like, I just wasn't. So I have that in there. I was like, okay, what if I just fight again? What if I could, I was like, I'm at the point now where, especially if I start picking up my jiu-jitsu, maybe I could fight.
Right.
But I would have absolutely fucking nothing to gain from that,
Yeah.
So, and that's what I gotta. That's why I finally figured, I was like, okay, I gotta stop even being around striking, because I'm older. I got kids. I want to write. Like, so why am I doing this? And I discovered through interviews and just thinking about like why that was so hard for me to make that decision and stick with it.
Yeah.
But for you, like, do you like striking? Do you like every aspect? I mean, are you thinking, do you just want to train and broadcast? Do you feel like you have to learn the sport in order to commentate on it?
Oh yeah. I mean, not coming from having a degree in journalism, like I think that's like the leg up, like a color commentator spot. But for me, like, again, like I didn't do well at like basketball or football or any, like, or even if you take into point like the Polynesian aspect, like rugby, like I just didn't take to it well. But this is what I can do, like that golfing trip or what have you. Like I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. Like I think, I'm gonna be like, hopefully life goal is like be like Elio and like roll up until like you're 80, or Billy Robinson, of the catch world. Like this is always gonna be a part of my life. But in rolling with people, like you just see, it's almost like that Lisa Ling, like, this is us, this is America, like you get to just kind of, just break bread with people, talk shop, and it's just like, man, if you are going to make the decision to fight, like I want to make sure that you are, you've got a very finite window. You're not going to do this forever. Like the days, because of Sage Northcutts, that's pretty much going to eradicate the Chuck Liddells and the Tech Abbotts of the world,
Yep.
So with that being said, okay, you've got like a 3 to 7 year window. What can I do to maximize your earning potential?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether that be sponsors, whether that be visibility on you. And a lot of these guys are like my friends. Like I've rolled with Herb Dean. Like that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have happened. I'm rolling with you. Like that
Mm-hmm.
in my head, because at the end of the day, I'm a fan first, you know?
Right.
But I mean, even like we're talking about Fight Academy Pasadena, like I I was in high school when Savant was fighting. Like I know that guy,
Mm-hmm.
IFL, like Bellator, like I know that guy, and I like low-key just get a little bit fanboy, like, and then I'm just like, okay, and it's like, bruh, and he's like the coolest dude, and it's just like, oh man, you know,
No.
but what can I do to shine light on these gyms, on these fighters, on these coaches, that everybody is like, you know, it's spreading the love, because
Mm-hmm.
the better you guys are doing, the better this is doing, there's more places for me to work,
Yep.
that I can do this, you know, without having to worry about bills. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's that simple, man. Like, and it's been this last year. It's been quite the journey. So the way that I got into like even the Fight Academy, right? So uh, I ended up losing my gig in Bakersfield, right? So I trained with Matt and Jill Baker, like, uh, and the crazy thing about that is I was going to do a competition, right? With like my last like $100, right? Before, like, we didn't know what was gonna happen. We lost our place, like didn't know what was gonna happen. Um, but at the same time, like John Jock was gonna do a seminar there, and I was just like, I'm gonna do the seminar. Yeah, you know, put that $100 down, and after that, I hadn't trained for 2 years. 2 years. So I was listening to this podcast, and I had been a fan probably since day one. It's MLW. It used to be a fledgling wrestling promotion in the early 2000s, but it was run by Court Bauer, who in WrestleSpeak, he was one of a lead writer for the WWE,
Mm.
and right now he's the executive producer for Combate
Oh,
America.
okay.
Yeah, so uh, I was like, man, if I can just like get into the show, like he started talking about it, and then I heard like Campbell McLaren, you know, co-creator of the UFC, talking on the Joe Rogan podcast about this Combate thing, and I was just like, you know, like growing up in Inglewood, like I I'm by blood Fijian and you know American black, but like in my heart I'm Latino. Like I speak more Spanish than I do Fijian,
Oh, really?
or yeah, absolutely. So I'm like, this is it, man. Like, and growing up a fan of like Chavez Senior, you know, like Julio Cesar Chavez Senior. It's just like, man, if we tap into the market, boom, man.
Mm.
You know, whether it be like, and I mean, EBI was just in
Mexico
Mexico.
City. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, to me, that's what it needs to be, man. Like families training together, regardless of, you know, like, oh, you're a jiu-jitsu guy, oh, you're a karate guy. I think whatever martial arts, that's where like the martial art will come into my life. Like whatever you're training, I think you definitely know where you are in life, you know, because you roll in, you think you're a badass. Oops,
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, you think you're a bad hombre, and you know, you get swept or you get choked, you know, and you know where you are in the world.
Mm-hmm. All right. So where do people see your work, or how do they contact you if they want to
Yeah,
do it? Like, and is that, I mean, so is that what you do? Do you have the vision? Do you see these videos? Are you
yeah.
doing that part of it?
Yeah, I'm the producer, so I set
Mm-hmm.
up all the logistics and what have you. And like I said, this last year has been pretty tremendous. Like, uh, you know, I got to do a video with Heinrich Wasmer, then Danny Rodriguez, who we both know
Yeah.
Danny in the 10th Planet Circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we just released one this morning for Marcos Bonilla, who's
Mm-hmm.
fighting for CXF. But Adam Woods, you know what? The way that I put it out, if you go on YouTube and um, basically just search Danny Rodriguez or Heinrich Wasmer. Like it's one of the first things that pops up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Twitter, it's According to Woods, all one word. Facebook, Instagram, it's pretty much the same. Same thing with Snapchat. Don't really use it all that much. The Snapchat aspect of it. After that, the way I heard of Snapchat was the Anthony Weiner debacle, the first one.
Oh, yeah. I
like,
never used it.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm married. I don't need to be sending any dick pics anywhere. Yeah. Not that that would be in my nature anyway, but
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's According to Woods. That's how you find me, Adam Woods on Facebook. But yeah, and you'll see some of the forays of the fandom. Like we got pictures with like Vince McMahon, and I mean even like Herb Dean. Like I think we might.
Yeah, no, I'm like I'm a fanboy too.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it, but it was cool. Herb came to 10th Planet one day. I got to be his partner. I was all excited about that.
Yeah, man.
And just the fact I'm not able to train with a black belt, and so I ran into him at a RFA fight.
Yeah.
We sat and we talked. He asked me to come down to the fight academy, and then we started doing. Just it'd usually just be the two of us because we're about the same size, and so it was perfect rolling. I got to show him a little bit of 10th Planet stuff. He got to show me, a ton of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I want to start getting back down there and rolling with him because that's someone. And he said the same thing with striking. He's like, no, he's like, this stuff doesn't make me happy anymore.
No.
He's like, I don't want to get kicked in the face. I don't want to
Yeah.
get kicked in the legs. He's like, but jiu-jitsu, man, we can just work however hard we want to work.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's fun, and you never. I was just talking with my daughter today. I was like, you can never learn it all.
No,
it's awesome.
No, man, that learning curve, man. It's just like it's infinite. It's like, and funny enough, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but like when I think when we were doing Danny Rodriguez's kind of a short piece on him for the Combate Ocho card back in August. Like I was just like, oh my gosh! Like we've actually filmed it at the old HQ site,
the old tap out.
Tap out, yeah, absolutely. And I stumbled upon I guess I don't know if it's like the intro video for like a tap out. I mean a 10th Planet subsidiary, but it's like Eddie Bravo basically. Like he's got this like cool little like
where
it opens up the world and he has got the world in his hands and I was just like, but it really made me realize like how infinite it is, like
what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like I guess we're both like purveyors of the Joe Rogan podcast, and there was the one where it's like probably a couple years ago, but he was talking about, and before I knew like anything about like 10th Planet, like even this like kind of journey that to kind of focus light on fighters, and gain visibility. Like I'm learning, but I didn't know who Eddie Bravo was before the Rogan podcast, and it's stupid to say now, but there was this deal where he had said like, oh, we were doing a shoot at Legends, the old HQ spot, and we're doing a photo shoot for High Times, and in between takes, and this is Rogan's account, like Eddie's like, oh, let me show you something, whatever, and he ended up getting Rogan, I think, into a vaporizer, and literally like, and is like throwing up like a symbol, and Rogan is like trying to get out, and Rogan's big, and most people, much like Herb Dean, they don't realize how real at grappling those two are. Rogan and Herb Dean, like just next level, and the fact that Eddie got Rogan, and Eddie at that time was kind of portly, and I mean Eddie's the man, so, but I was just like, oh my gosh, like. And it kind of highlighted seeing 10th Planet opens the world. It was like, and regardless of what it is, the 10th Planet, catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu,
it's all amazing.
Yeah, man. Sambo, Russian sambo, like all of it, dude. I love it all. I will watch it all. funny enough, like growing up, I got in trouble for stealing, right? And what did my parents and stepmom do? They took away my wrestling, right? So there's this one particular instance, like my dad worked at nights, right? And he came home early. And I'm like, what, 14? Of all the things that I could have been watching, all the sword things that I could have been watching on a Saturday night at, like, 11 o'clock, like I was watching sumo because, like, they were told me I couldn't, and they walk in and, like, you've seen that scene a million times, like American Pie, like, oh, what are you doing or whatever. And it's not even about that. It was like, I'm watching sumo. Sumo what? And I wouldn't say it. I wouldn't say, sumo wrestling, because I would have admitted that, hey, you got me. No, I was watching it because it's the art of it, man. I will watch. If you got two people, with similar backgrounds, similar training techniques, or even different, no guns, no weapons, like that, you put that stuff away, like the action movies and whatever, you take me out of it, But you put two people that are willing just to show what they have, man, I'm in like Flint, brother.
Yeah, cause I go back and forth on watching it. Sometimes, man, I just don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of sports. But if it's someone I know, like, I definitely am gonna be watching, like, Paige and Michelle. I interviewed both of them. So that fight,
Whoa.
Leslie Smith is on that card. Alan Jabon's on that card.
Yeah, man, he's a local guy.
When it's fights like that, man, especially people I know, like, I'm gonna watch it. I love seeing that competition.
Yeah.
And I always kind of have to question myself on jiu-jitsu competitions. Like, do I still want to do it? Like, is it important? Do I want to go spend a whole Saturday or Sunday just sitting there waiting for my turn, whatever else, and pay money to do this?
Yeah.
But I realized, like, I just saw that Josh Barnett is having his thing this Sunday, and it's crazy. Crazy rules. So one, CSW is scary as fuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Catch wrestling is scary. It's painful. Everything else, and the rule set is kind of crazy where you could get pinned.
Yeah,
too.
That's catch wrestling all the way, man.
So
that's my deal.
Yeah, so that's not in my advantage at all. That's not an advantage. But I was telling my daughter, I was like, I'm excited about it. I was like, I'm just gonna go. Man. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I was like, I'm going in to win. Like, the odds of me actually trying to win, me actually winning, not good. I'm 44 years old, but I was like, you know what? I said, but I'm not gonna have any shame if I lose to a 20-year-old dude. I was like, or 30, or even if he's older than me. It's like, because I went out there and I tried. So I was like, yeah, it is still important to me. I like to compete. I like to. I want to push. I don't want to lose. I think that was one of the biggest reasons why I actually stuck with jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Is because I was getting smashed by fucking everybody. Yeah. Like, most submitted man in America. I think I told you this, but I think it was like probably, I never actually counted, but it was probably at least 500 different people in the course of this year and a half, 2 years, around the country that have submitted me. I was like, most people don't experience that, and that's not a fun thing, man. No. That's like, you don't want to fucking lose to everybody. You don't want to. It's like one thing losing to fighters, but another thing losing to, like, younger kids, people that haven't trained very long at all. You're like, oh man. So that's one of the things that's awesome about it, man. It's just like, it makes you want to push. It's like, okay, I'm no longer gonna get submitted by everybody. I was like, I won't get submitted by guys, but it's not everybody. So I was like, yeah.
It's so funny because, like, I don't quantify it. Like I'm not in it for belts. Like I've never competed, like, at all. Like I said, I was going to do that one, when I was at Matt and Jill Baker's school up in Bakersfield, about that John Jock seminar, and I was like, this is a once in a lifetime deal. Let me just go ahead and do it, And I think I know for sure, like, I've got a couple things in my peripheral, like in the 2-year window. Of course, we've got the, like the producing. I want to start one of these actually, podcasts, and just like the multimedia aspect of the MMA part of it, or and then not just MMA, but like jiu-jitsu, like the high level grappling, like the Metamorphoses and the EBIs, and there's so many out there. Anything on flow sports, like, oh man, it's so crazy. But I'm not in it to, like, get a belt. I'm not in it to, like, is everybody at a country club that are playing golf, are they trying to get into the PGA? Like, no, no. And that's my deal. Like, if I can learn something, like, man, you know it. Hit your first sweep.
Yeah.
Hit your first sweep. And it's better than any home run. It's better than, like, I'm not even talking about a sub, you know? It's like a cathartic, man. It's like everything that you've learned up, you know? And then the next roll, you're done, you know? And I love it, man. It's just like, it's this ebb and flow, yin and yang. Like, you're better some days, you're not great the others, you know? Like, I've been thrown around by, like, you know, 300-pound dudes. I've gotten thrown around by and submitted by, you know, 6-year-old 80-pound girls.
Yeah.
No worse to wear, you know? And I love it, you know? And the fact that we're able to kind of help each other, like, we're all on the path for each other, like, you know? And that team aspect. And most people don't see it if you're a casual MMA fan, because that's it, like a casual MMA fan. And then, you know, like, that is the gateway to the jiu-jitsu, to the other stuff that's out there that encompasses it. But for me, it's just like, I just want to do it. I feel like nothing else makes sense. Like, and you're talking about, like, your King's MMA experience, and for me, like, the first time I ever you know, did, like, any formal striking was at Fight Academy, and I was just like, okay, you know, it's a class, whatever. And I think I don't know, it wasn't an intro class, but, like, the first person who ever walked me through a drill and you know, like, hold mitts for me, and not knowing anything from apple butter, was James the Beast Wilson. And if you don't know, man, James the Beast, he's a heavyweight kickboxer. He's got some highlight reels on YouTube that man, they're infamous, and he's just like, hit me harder. And he's the sweetest guy. Like, let me preface it with that, man. But it was just like, man, I don't know what I'm doing, you know? And Savant, James, Akko Harper, like, they're all so great. But, like, for me, there's nothing sweeter than hitting, like, hearing the snap of a jab on a heavy bag. Like, I think it's like, that's a symphony, you know, all to itself. But, like, I respect that aspect of it, you know? Like, I respect the folks that, you know, got into karate for, you know, after watching Bruce Lee films and what have you. But, like, for me, it's the grappling at the end of the day. When I was 7, I said I wanted to be a professional wrestler. Like, I had made it up in my mind. I can appease that 7-year-old part of me every time I step on the mat. Whether win, lose, or draw, it's not about that, man. Like I said, going back into wrestling, man, 364, you're getting your tail kicked, man.
Yep.
But what's it all for? That big gold belt, you know? And that is a narrative I can get into. And, you know, and when you do a competition, and, like, you do a competition, or you roll on the mat, and, like, making that, like, I'm gonna do this, you know, like, you kind of go in your mind a little bit, you know, and it's just like, do I really want to do that, you know? Or, you know, somebody elbow you and you're just like, man, this is, what the hell am I doing? And that person come back, man, and then that person nail that sweep, and that person get that first sub, and you're in it for them. You see it happening on the other side of the room, and you're just like, yeah, that's what I'm into, man. And if I, again, whether it's grappling, whether it's MMA, you know, like, the stories of the people there. I mean, hell, we got women's MMA. You know, we've got women's jiu-jitsu tournaments. Like, that's crazy. It's everyone. For the first time, the whole family could train. You know, it's not in this, you know, garage, you know, like it's amazing from, like, when the Gracies first came here to where we are now. Like, even going to, like, the headquarters in Torrance, it's just, like, nutty, man. How many 10 Planet affiliates are there?
Yeah, there's a ton now.
Fight Academy is, like, they're growing, you know. Matt Baker up there, he's got two locations. But it's not full. It's not full.
Oh yeah, not even close.
That's, you know, here, 10 Planet Youth Center, like, and you guys got the chess thing going on. Like, it's so crazy. But there needs to be more, man.
Yeah.
There needs to be more. And if I can tell you something that sitting on the couch that resonates with you about the two people that are there, about the organization, about the journey to where we are now and where we're going, that's where the passion comes from. That's what I'm in for.
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
I dig it. Man, I should probably get going. Well, the kids are asleep, but it's late and I haven't eaten. And well, we didn't roll that hard, so that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'm not a formidable opponent.
Oh no, we just didn't do that many rounds. That's all I meant. No, that was perfect. No, but I appreciate you coming out here, man. I'll give you a choice of a short story to end. So I think there's only 2 left that I haven't played on the podcast.
Okay.
They're both from Twisted Reunion, which is my horror novel. It's on sale through Christmas for like 99 cents, ebook, Audible if you do that. I think it's only $1.99. But so if you like scary stories, you get to pick between, I think it's Group Session, which is about a little therapy session at the psychologist's place, or Lethal Injection, where you know the future. You get every citizen gets a little slip of paper which tells them whether or not they're selected for the draft, and then also 1 word or 2 words of how they're going to die. So it might just say whatever it's going to say. It could just say cold, could say whatever, but you don't know when it's going to happen, but you know when you're going to die.
Whoa.
I was like, you should pick that story. That story's way better.
Yeah, I think
Let's
so.
go with that one.
Yeah, I like that one.
Okay. All right. So we'll go with that. Thank you very much for this. We will figure out, I think we'll probably be working together. I think we'll probably be creating something. I've been focusing on Unlocking the Cage, trying to finish that up, but I need to do something for the documentary. Also need to put together something cool for the high school foundation, or whatever we're going to call it. So
let me know,
so,
man.
yeah,
Whatever I can do to shine a
yeah.
light, man. This is, I'm just honored to be here, man. And it's, yeah, dude, this is all love. Thank you, brother.
No, very cool. Thanks for coming out. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And here is Lethal Injection, narrated by T. Quillen off of Twisted Reunion. Peace.
Lethal Injection. Jack held the phone with his shoulder so he could use both hands to clean his chrome-plated 9mm. "I'll be there," Brian said. "I was just asking if you were sure about this guy. I don't even know this guy." "He's cool. I've got a bad feeling." "Don't care." Jack set down the wire brush and checked the gun's barrel. "You should have told me that last week, so I could have found someone else." "You really trust this guy?" "I already told you he's cool. You need to chill. Can't lose your shit just because some slip said stranger." "I said I'd be there." "Good. My rent's due Monday. If this guy's right, we should be able to clear at least 10,000. How many of your teenage buddies make that in one night?" "Fine," Brian said. "I'll pick you up at 8. Jack set the phone down, loaded 9 hollow points in the magazine, plus 1 in the chamber. It'd be better if Brian wasn't his sister's stepson, but at least he was trustworthy, unlike nearly everyone else in Jack's life. The phone rang a minute later. Jack picked it up and said, "You better not tell me you've changed your mind." After a silence, a woman said, Is Jack there?" "Who wants to know?" The voice softened. "Jackie?" Ashlyn was older now, and her voice sounded different, but Jack would never forget the woman who'd stabbed him in the back. "Jackie, is that you? Oh, please say something. It is, ain't it?" Jack had to sit down. "How'd you get my number?" "I know you gotta hate me, Jackie, but stop calling me Jackie. It's not my fucking name." Ashlyn stuttered an apology. "How you been?" "Are you serious?" "I wanted to make sure you're okay." "What makes you think I've got anything to say to you?" "Did you finish up school?" "I like thinking about you as a lawyer." "Yeah, finished top of my class." "Oh, wow. I always knew you'd do good for yourself." "Glad to see you're just as sharp as ever." I dropped out 3 years ago. Jack stopped for a second, surprised to feel a twinge of guilt at being mean. He focused on her betrayal and could barely keep his voice from shaking as he said, "Who gave you my number?" He listened to her pained, amphetamine-laced breaths and eyed the 9mm, wondering what he might have done with it if she'd appeared at his door instead of calling. They'd gotten married at 16. He'd known it was doomed from the start, but he couldn't let her go. Stuck through every stint she spent in rehab, until she blew everything to shit on his 20th birthday. "I'm hanging up," he said. Don't, Ashlyn begged. "I got your number from the selection service letter. They mailed it here by mistake." Jack stayed on the line, unsure of what to say. "Your slip came with it." Jack's stomach twisted. Part of him wanted to know what was on the slip, but the other part wanted to slam the phone down, rip it from the wall, smash it to a million pieces. "Are you there, Jackie?" "I'm here." Jack's hand began to cramp around the phone, his knuckles white. He forced himself to relax his grip. "What did it say?" "You're not getting drafted." Jack's hand loosened a little. "That's good, right?" she said. "What did it say?" "You remember Todd?" "What do you think?" She sighed. "Jack." "What about him?" "His slip said gunfire. They didn't even stick him in basic training. They just sent him over there with the gun in his hand, figuring he should take out as many as possible before his time's up." Jack didn't want to think of the scrawny geek who banged her in their bed. "You want me to feel sorry for him?" "His brother Charlie can't get a job. His slip said electrocution. He could die anywhere. No employer will touch him." "Why are you telling me this? What did mine say?" "Come home, honey. Come back home." Jack looked around at his filthy one-bedroom apartment, grateful for what he had. "I don't think so." "Come on, baby. I know I've made mistakes, but I love you." "That means absolutely nothing to me." "I know you're mad, and you've got every—" "You're right. You're right. Now I'm hanging up." "Jackie!" Jack was furious at the tears building in his eyes. He shouted, "You can't just call up and expect me to... What do you want?" "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I screwed up." "You're high right now," he said, "aren't you?" No, I'm clean, I swear it. I'm better now, Jackie." Jack didn't know what to say or how he felt. He set down the gun and wiped his hand on his jeans. "What the hell does my slip say?" It was Ashlyn's turn to remain quiet. "If you ever want to see me again, you'd better tell me now." After a moment, she said, "The death penalty. You're going to die from the death penalty." Jack blew out a breath. "The death penalty?" Ashlyn sounded too cheerful when she said, "It might not be that bad. Maybe it'll be when you're an old man, ready to die anyhow." That's not how it worked, and she knew it. Holy shit. Jack was now talking more to himself than to her. "This is why I didn't want to know." "Well, you get used to it." She filled the phone with a coughing fit and then cleared her throat. "Sort of." Jack pictured himself strapped to a gurney, some heavy-set nurse plunging a foot-long needle into his arm, feeding the fatal fluid into his veins. "Will you come home? Please, come home." "I want that letter. I need to see it." "It's right here. Did you eat yet?" Such painful hope in her voice. "I could make lunch for us." "I won't stay long enough for that." "So you'll come by?" "Same house?" Yeah, same one. Fine. Jack hung up the phone, considered calling Brian, telling him they'd have to postpone the plan. But that'd be premature. Maybe Ashlyn was lying. It wouldn't be the first time. She was probably trying to sucker him back now that she was alone. There wasn't a letter. It was only 1 o'clock. She'd said she'd gotten it today. The mail didn't come that early. She had said today, right? Maybe he should go. He could make it out to her house and back with plenty of time to figure out what to do about the job. The death penalty was the worst way to go. They cut the anesthetics years ago, and shortages had forced them to dilute the potassium chloride. Jack got up from the table and considered leaving the 9mm, even though he never walked outside without protection. If Ashlyn was telling the truth, Jack didn't need to worry about being gunned down by anyone. He didn't have to fear for his life. That was already decided. The selection service didn't make mistakes. Jack liked to think of himself as being level-headed. He'd cooled down a lot over the past year, and he wasn't making any rash decisions until that slip was in his hand. He tucked the 9mm in his waistband and headed for the door. A few minutes later, Jack was on the highway, sticking to the speed limit. He needed to keep away from the law at all costs. And he was in no hurry to return to that house. But at least the bastard she'd cheated with was as good as dead. No more worries about Todd's late-night visits to Jack's bedroom while he was out hustling. As he neared his exit, Jack wondered who he'd kill to earn his death sentence. There was no denying that Jack had done some bad things in order to survive. But he'd never crossed that line. If things ever got heated during the robbery and he was left with no choice, he'd do it. But that was the only way. He hoped the slip was wrong. Even thought about tossing the gun out the window. You can't shoot with something you don't have. He could take certain precautions and try to avoid it as long as possible. At least the death penalty verdict was clear. Sometimes the verdicts were vague, like the one Jack's mother had been dealt. Jack exited the highway and headed west. He questioned if it was better to know exactly how he'd die. When Jack was a baby, his mother had gotten a slip with one word: cold. They all assumed it would occur when she was an old woman, but that didn't stop her from consuming every imaginable vitamin and keeping away from everyone with the slightest sickness. They'd even moved to California, and she refused to go near the mountains or anywhere with a walk-in freezer. Then, after 22 years of paranoia and pills, one night she rolled off her bed, choked on her own phlegm, and died on the floor. Just a common cold. The same sentence his wife Ashlyn received. An ex-wife. Jack pulled the car into the driveway and shut off the engine before he could chicken out and drive away. He hadn't seen Ashlyn in almost 2 years. The living room curtain was pulled back, revealing the same tragically gorgeous woman he'd fallen in love with. But now her eyes were so ringed and black, he wondered if she'd been punched. There was no denying she'd lived a rough life. It almost made Jack feel sorry for her. Almost. He got out of the car and slammed the door shut. Just the sight of her sickened him. She waited on the porch, held open the door. Jack knew she wanted to hug him, but he walked right past her, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Oh, Jackie." She closed the door and followed Jack into the living room. She smelled like an ashtray and 3-day-old sweat. "You're still so handsome." Jack sat down on the sofa, the same worn-down piece of crap they'd had before they moved in together. They swore it would only be temporary. He wanted to tell her it looked like shit, but he couldn't even look at her. "I made some sandwiches, Jackie. I know you said you weren't hungry, but maybe you want one?" I said I wasn't staying long. You have my papers? She sat down next to him and put her hand on top of his. He jerked away. "Won't you at least look at me? I'm sorry." she cried. "I'm so sorry for what I did." Jack stared straight ahead at the fireplace. "I just want my slip." Sounding both hurt and angry, she said, "You don't even believe me. You think I don't regret everything?" "I need to see it." "I shouldn't have told you. It's better not to know." "Well, you did, so go get it." Ashlyn started coughing, her whole body shaking. He scooted away from her as she gagged, almost threw up. She wiped the spit from her mouth and said, I'm sorry." Jack made the mistake of looking at her, guilt etched into her thin face. He stood. "Where's the letter? I'll get it myself." "The counter by the fridge." Jack moved into the kitchen and read the selection service notice. It said he was not drafted, but still qualified to volunteer. Jack folded the letter in half and stuffed it into his back pocket. The other paper, the one he needed to see, was nowhere to be found. He shouted, "Where's the slip?" "It should be there." "It's not." "Just leave it alone. I'll find it later. Come sit down." Jack stormed into the doorway. "Get it for me now, or I'm leaving." "I threw it away. You don't need to see it, Jackie." Jack turned to the white trash can next to the fridge and took off the top. Ashlyn yelled, "Don't go digging in there." She tried to come after him and started coughing. He pushed aside the slimy eggshells and the morning newspaper. His heart rate quickened as he rifled through the stack of greasy envelopes and junk mail. But the slip wasn't there. He dug deeper, reached his hand to the bottom of the bag. His finger caught something sharp and he yanked it back. Jack sucked the drop of blood from the tip of his finger and looked into the trash can. "What the fuck? I thought you were clean." "I haven't used in years." Jack held up the small syringe. "Then what the hell is this?" "It's my medicine." Jack continued his search, too low for her to hear. He said, "Is that what you call it now?" His hands were disgusting, and there was food all over his arms. He kept searching, cursing himself the whole time. He was an idiot for coming over and having to deal with her. "What color is it? It better be here. If this is some scheme to get me back in your goddamn life." "It's white. It should be near the top. I threw it out this morning." Jack took a deep breath and blew it out. He picked up the folded newspaper and shook it. A small scrap of paper fluttered to the faded linoleum. Jack picked it up. She hadn't lied. His fate was spelled out for him in large block letters. Lethal injection. The kitchen walls were closing in. He stumbled out of the room and leaned against the wall. He shut his eyes, struggled not to be sick. His chest felt constricted as if he were strapped down. His arm ached where the needle would one day plunge. He was going to die, and it wasn't going to be pleasant. Her warm hand rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry you had to see that. But you've got to think positive." She offered a weak smile. "Oh, you're bleeding." Jack looked down and saw the red bead on the carpet. She handed him a tissue. "Here you go." The back of her hand was covered with reddish-purple blotches. Jack looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Her face was so haggard, her eyes sunken. She was just a shell of the woman he once knew. He felt nauseous. "What's your medicine for?" She looked away and shook her head. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "How bad is it?" he asked. It took her a moment to speak. "It wasn't my fault." Jack felt the skin crawling up his back. "What are you talking about?" "The doctor was just giving me a shot. He had cuts on his finger." She looked at the floor. "They called it a supervirus." Jack threw her hands off his shoulder. He ran for the kitchen and stumbled to the sink. He turned on the hot water and held his pricked finger underneath it. squeezed as hard as he could. Ashlyn was crying, saying she was sorry. So fucking sorry.